The snow fell in thick, heavy flakes, muffling the world into an eerie silence. Captain Sarah Hayes crouched atop the ridge, her rifle cradled in her gloved hands. The jagged peaks of the Rockies stretched endlessly around her, their ridges shrouded in white mist. For most, this desolate expanse would inspire awe or dread. For Sarah, it was just another battlefield. Through the scope, her target came into view. The Zentari soldier moved with the smooth confidence of a predator, his glowing blue armor casting faint halos in the twilight. He carried a plasma rifle across his back, its energy core humming faintly in the frozen air. He wasn't looking for threats. He didn't believe there were any. "They don't even try to hide," Sarah muttered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Why would they?" came the low response in her earpiece. "They think they're gods compared to us. Let's remind them they bleed like the rest of us." Her spotter, Jesse Whitmore, crouched a few feet behind her. His binoculars reflected the faint glow of the Zentari armor as he scanned the perimeter. "Just one scout," he murmured. "What's the play?" Sarah didn't answer immediately. Her finger hovered over the rifle's trigger as she adjusted the scope. The Zentari might be alone, but she didn't trust luck or arrogance to protect her. Every shot had to count. "Command," she whispered, pressing the communicator embedded in her collar. "Viper here. Target in sight. Engaging." "Copy that," Command replied, the static-laden voice calm and clipped. "Stay sharp, Viper. Reinforcements are monitoring. Always." Sarah's world narrowed. The cold, the wind, even the faint ache in her muscles from holding position, all of it vanished. There was only the Zentari soldier in her sights, the distant hum of his rifle, and the steady rhythm of her breathing. The rifle cracked, splitting the frozen air. The Zentari staggered, blue blood splattering across the pristine snow. His body collapsed, the glow of his armor fading as life left him. "Target neutralized," Sarah reported, already scanning for movement. Behind her, Jesse let out a low whistle. "Clean shot, Captain. You sure you don't have cybernetics?" Sarah snorted, her lips twitching into a brief smile. "Just talent. Pack it up, Whitmore. They'll send someone to check on him soon." Jesse stowed the binoculars and hoisted his pack, the tension already creeping into his movements. "Think they heard the shot?" "They always do," Sarah replied grimly. The two moved quickly, descending the ridge along a narrow path carved by centuries of wind and water. Every step was deliberate, their boots crunching softly in the snow. The jagged cliffs above provided partial cover, but Sarah knew better than to rely on terrain alone. "Command," she murmured. "Moving to fallback position Alpha." "Roger, Viper. Be advised, Zentari patrols converging from the northeast. Estimated arrival in 10 minutes. Understood. We'll be ghosts by then." Sarah pushed them into a faster pace, her body moving on autopilot despite the rugged terrain. Every motion was second nature now: crawl, climb, pivot, scan. Survival demanded precision, and precision was her specialty. "Captain," Jesse ventured after a moment, his voice hesitant, "do you think Command has an actual plan? Or are we just delaying the inevitable?" Sarah paused mid-stride, glancing over her shoulder. Jesse's face was pale beneath the grime, his eyes flicking between her and the mountains ahead. She sighed, the weight of leadership settling heavily on her shoulders. "Our plan," she said evenly, "is to make them bleed for every inch they take. That's all we can do right now." It wasn't a comforting answer, but it was the truth. They reached a rocky overhang, its shadow blending seamlessly with the mountain. Sarah motioned for Jesse to hold position as she climbed onto a ledge to survey the area. Through her binoculars, the faint glimmer of Zentari patrols came into focus. 6 of them, she murmured. "Standard patrol formation. They're sweeping for the scout." Jesse's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Think they'll find him?" "They will," she replied grimly, lowering the binoculars. "And when they do, they'll know we're still here." Sarah dropped back to the ground, her mind racing. The Zentari were faster, stronger, and armed with technology decades beyond Earth's capabilities. But they weren't invincible. Their arrogance made them predictable, and predictability was a weakness Sarah could exploit. "Whitmore," she said, her voice firm. "You're covering the flank. Stay low, don't engage unless necessary." "What about you?" Sarah pulled her rifle free and checked the chamber. "I'll handle the welcoming committee." Jesse opened his mouth to argue but stopped when he caught the look in her eyes. Instead, he nodded and took his position, his rifle angled toward the back trail. Sarah climbed onto the ledge again, settling into a prone position. She adjusted her scope, her breath steady despite the chill sinking into her bones. The Zentari patrol moved closer, their blue visors glowing faintly in the twilight. They were cautious now, their movements precise as they scanned every shadow. Plasma rifles at the ready, they advanced in perfect synchronization. Sarah's finger rested lightly on the trigger. She waited, her breathing slow and even. The lead Zentari came into range, his visor sweeping toward her position. "Gotcha," she whispered. The rifle barked, and the Zentari dropped, his armor sparking as the bullet tore through him. "Contact!" one of the aliens shouted, his voice distorted but unmistakably panicked. Sarah fired again, the recoil sharp against her shoulder. Another Zentari fell, his weapon clattering to the ground. "Two down," she reported, rolling to a new position as plasma bolts lit up the snow around her. Jesse's rifle cracked, and a third Zentari dropped. "Nice shot," Sarah muttered. "Thanks, Captain." Jesse's voice was tight, but there was a flicker of pride beneath the fear. The remaining 3 Zentari scattered, their formation broken. One moved to flank her position, but Sarah anticipated the maneuver. She shifted her aim and squeezed the trigger, the shot punching through his chest. "4 down," she said, moving again. The last 2 Zentari hesitated, their confidence faltering. Sarah used the pause to her advantage, dropping another with a clean headshot. The final alien turned to retreat, his plasma rifle firing wildly, but Jesse's shot caught him mid-step. 6 down, Sarah confirmed, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The silence returned, heavy and oppressive. Sarah scanned the area one last time before climbing down. "Nice work, Whitmore," she said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Didn't think we'd make it," Jesse admitted, his voice shaky. Sarah gave him a faint smile. "We're not done yet. Let's move." They disappeared into the mountains, leaving the dead behind as the snow began to fall again, erasing all traces of the battle. The small cave barely qualified as shelter, but it was enough to keep the biting wind at bay. Captain Sarah Hayes sat cross-legged on the rough stone floor, her rifle resting against her shoulder as she cleaned the barrel. Beside her, Jesse Whitmore paced back and forth, the faint glow of their portable heater casting his long shadow against the rock walls. "They'll send more," Jesse muttered, his voice low but tense. "They always do." Sarah glanced up, her expression unreadable. "Of course they will. That's what they do. And we'll be ready." "Ready?" Jesse stopped mid-step, turning to face her. "Captain, we've been running and shooting for months. We've lost more people than I can count. How do you stay so calm?" "I'm not calm," Sarah said flatly, running a cloth through the rifle's barrel. "I'm focused. There's a difference." Jesse opened his mouth to argue but thought better of it. Instead, he sighed and slumped against the wall, his breath misting faintly in the chill air. "Focus doesn't stop them from swarming us. They've got ships, drones, tech that makes us look like cavemen with sticks." Sarah set the rifle down carefully, her sharp gaze locking onto Jesse. "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't seen what they've done to our cities, our people? But here's the thing, none of that matters right now. What matters is that we're alive, and they're losing soldiers every time they come after us." Jesse shook his head. "It feels like a drop in the ocean." "It's a start," Sarah said firmly. "And it's all we've got." The quiet crackle of the portable heater filled the silence between them. Outside, the wind howled, a reminder of the hostile environment waiting beyond the cave's narrow mouth. The communicator embedded in Sarah's collar crackled to life, breaking the stillness. "Viper, come in." She pressed a finger to her ear. This is Viper. Go ahead. Command here. We've intercepted Centauri comms. They're mobilizing a recon unit to sweep the sector. ETA 20 minutes. Sarah swore softly. How many? Unknown. Could be a small team or an entire platoon. Be advised, their scanners are getting better. They might pick up heat signatures. Understood. We'll move in 5. Sarah replied, cutting the line. She stood, already gathering her gear. Pack up, Jesse. We're not staying to find out how big that recon team is. Jesse groaned but obeyed, stuffing the heater and other essentials into his pack. Where are we going? Another cave? Sarah tightened the straps on her pack and slung her rifle over her shoulder. No. Command's got an old supply cache 2 clicks east of here. If we move fast, we can restock and relocate before they get too close. Jesse raised an eyebrow. Restock with what? I thought we were running out of everything. Bullets, explosives, maybe even some old rations, Sarah said. Anything that gives us an edge. They moved out into the storm, the wind slicing through their gear as they trudged eastward. The snow was knee-deep in places, slowing their pace to a crawl. Sarah led the way, her movements deliberate as she scanned for signs of Centauri activity. Feels too quiet, Jesse said after a while, his voice barely audible over the wind. It's the storm, Sarah replied. Covers us as much as it covers them. Stay sharp. The landscape around them was a blur of white, jagged rocks jutting out like the spines of some ancient creature. Sarah's eyes were constantly moving, searching for movement, for the telltale glow of Centauri armor. When they reached the coordinates for the supply cache, it was buried beneath a thick layer of snow and ice. Sarah knelt, brushing away the snow to reveal a rusted metal hatch. Help me with this, she said, motioning to Jesse. Together, they pried the hatch open, the hinges groaning in protest. Below was a narrow ladder leading into darkness. Sarah descended first, her boots hitting the ground with a dull thud. Jesse followed, closing the hatch behind them. The air inside was stale but warmer, the walls lined with crates stamped with the faded insignia of Earth's military. Sarah flicked on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom. Jackpot, she said, prying open a crate. Inside were boxes of ammunition, grenades, and a few battered MREs. Jesse let out a low whistle. Didn't think Command still had stashes like this lying around. Most of them were scavenged or destroyed, Sarah said, stuffing extra rounds into her pack. Guess we got lucky. As they worked, a faint vibration ran through the floor. Sarah froze, her hand hovering over a grenade. Did you feel that? She asked, her voice sharp. Jesse nodded, his eyes wide. What is it? Drones, Sarah said grimly. A low hum began to build, growing louder with each passing second. Sarah grabbed her rifle and motioned for Jesse to follow. Out. Now. They scrambled up the ladder and into the blinding snow. Above them, a Centauri drone hovered, its sleek frame bristling with sensors and weapons. Move! Sarah barked, firing a shot at the drone. The bullet struck its hull, sending it spiraling briefly before it steadied. Jesse sprinted ahead, his boots slipping on the ice. Plasma bolts rained down, scorching the snow around them. Sarah kept firing, her shots calculated and precise, until the drone exploded in a shower of sparks. They know we're here, she said, reloading as they ran. Captain, we can't outrun another patrol, Jesse panted. We don't have to, Sarah replied. We just need to lead them somewhere they can't follow. Jesse glanced at her, his brow furrowed. And where's that? Sarah pointed to the narrow trail ahead, a path that wound dangerously close to a steep ravine. That's suicide, Jesse said. Not if you stick to my lead, Sarah shot back. Trust me. Reluctantly, Jesse followed as Sarah led them down the treacherous path. The sound of Centauri boots and drones grew louder behind them, but Sarah focused on each step, every move precise and deliberate. When they reached the edge of the ravine, Sarah stopped, turning to face the pursuing Centauri. Go, she told Jesse. I'll cover you, Captain. Now! Jessie hesitated, then nodded and disappeared down the path. Sarah knelt, her rifle steady as the first Centauri soldiers came into view. Welcome to Earth, she muttered, squeezing the trigger. The rifle cracked, and the fight began. The faint glow of dawn began creeping over the horizon, turning the snow-drenched peaks into a canvas of muted pinks and blues. Captain Sarah Hayes adjusted her position atop a narrow ridge, her rifle balanced against her shoulder. Beside her, Jesse Whitmore crouched low, his breath curling into faint clouds as he scanned the valley below through binoculars. Nothing yet, Jesse muttered. But if that intel was right, they'll be here soon. Sarah nodded, her gaze steady as she observed the faint tracks leading up from the valley floor. The snow had partially covered them, but their source was clear: Centauri patrols. They always come, Sarah said, her voice low. And when they do, we'll make them regret it. Jesse glanced at her, a flicker of unease crossing his face. You think the locals will show? We're not exactly their favorite people. They'll come, Sarah replied confidently. They hate the Centauri even more than they hate us. Just as the words left her mouth, a low whistle cut through the crisp air. Sarah's body tensed as she turned toward the sound. Emerging from the shadow of a nearby boulder was a wiry figure cloaked in animal hides, their face obscured by a makeshift scarf. They moved with practiced stealth, their boots crunching softly against the snow. That them? Jesse asked, keeping his hand near his rifle. Sarah didn't answer immediately. Instead, she raised a hand in a silent signal. The figure stopped, lowering their scarf to reveal a weathered face, sharp eyes scanning the ridge. Captain Hayes, the figure called, their voice rough but steady. You called for a meeting. Here I am. Sarah stood, keeping her hands visible. Combe, she greeted. I wasn't sure you'd come. Combe smirked, his expression equal parts amusement and caution. Desperate times make for strange allies. And your little stunt in the valley got their attention. Centauri are furious. That was the idea, Sarah said, stepping forward. But we can't keep fighting them alone. Your people know these mountains better than anyone. Work with us, and we can drive them out together. Combe's eyes narrowed. You assume we want to help you. Last time your kind made promises, we were left with empty bellies and burned villages. We're not here to make promises, Sarah replied evenly. We're here to kill Centauri. Combe studied her, his sharp gaze probing for weakness. Finally, he nodded. Fair enough. What's the plan? Sarah motioned for him to join them by the ridge. They're sending reinforcements through this valley. If we set an ambush here, we can hit them hard before they establish a foothold. We'll handle the heavy firepower. You and your people focus on the terrain. Block escape routes, create choke points. Combe raised an eyebrow. And when they retaliate? They will, Sarah admitted. But if we hit them hard enough, fast enough, they'll think twice about committing more resources to this area. Combe considered this, his fingers drumming against the hilt of the knife strapped to his belt. You're either very brave or very foolish, Captain. Both, Sarah said with a wry smile. But it's better than waiting to die. After a moment, Combe extended a hand. We'll help. But if you double-cross us... We won't, Sarah interrupted, shaking his hand firmly. Jesse exhaled softly as Combe retreated to rally his people. That went better than expected. Sarah glanced at him. Don't get comfortable. The hard part hasn't started yet. By midday, the ambush was set. Combe's people had transformed the valley into a deadly trap. Fallen trees blocked key paths, snow-packed rocks teetered precariously above narrow trails, and hidden tripwires lined the main routes. Sarah crouched in the shadow of an outcropping, her sniper rifle trained on the valley entrance. Jesse was stationed nearby with a portable rocket launcher, his fingers tapping anxiously against the trigger guard. They're coming, Combe's voice crackled over the comms. Through her scope, Sarah spotted the first signs of movement. A Centauri recon team advanced cautiously, their glowing visors scanning the area. Behind them marched a squad of heavily armed soldiers, their plasma rifles gleaming ominously in the pale light. "Hold!" Sarah ordered, her voice calm but firm. The Zentari moved deeper into the valley, oblivious to the traps hidden beneath the snow. One soldier stepped on a tripwire, triggering a cascade of rocks that crushed the rear flank. "Now!" Sarah shouted. Jesse fired the rocket launcher, the explosion ripping through the center of the Zentari formation. Sarah followed with precision shots, her rifle cracking as Zentari soldiers fell one by one. Combs' people struck from the shadows, knives flashing as they took down stragglers. The valley erupted into chaos, plasma bolts and gunfire echoing off the cliffs. "Flank them!" Sarah barked into her comm, repositioning for a better angle. Combs' voice came through, strained but determined. "We've got them pinned. Keep the pressure on." A Zentari drone buzzed overhead, its sensors locking onto Sarah's position. She rolled to cover as plasma bolts scorched the snow around her. "Drone!" Jesse yelled, aiming his rifle. Before he could fire, Combs' archers launched a volley of crude but effective arrows, one piercing the drone's energy core. It exploded in a fiery burst, raining debris over the battlefield. Sarah gritted her teeth, focusing on the remaining Zentari. They were regrouping, their leader barking orders in their alien tongue. She adjusted her scope, targeting the leader's glowing visor. "Gotcha!" she muttered, pulling the trigger. The Zentari commander dropped, his fall sending ripples of panic through the ranks. "They're breaking!" Jesse called. "Don't let up!" Sarah replied, firing again. Within minutes, the surviving Zentari retreated, their glowing visors disappearing into the distance. The valley fell silent except for the labored breaths of the fighters. Sarah stood, scanning for any lingering threats before lowering her rifle. Combe approached, blood streaking his face but a fierce grin lighting his features. "That was impressive." Sarah nodded, her expression grim. "It's a start. But they'll be back, and they'll bring more." Combe shrugged. "Then we'll be ready." Jesse approached, his face pale but triumphant. "We did it. We actually did it." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "One battle at a time, Whitmore. Let's get moving before they regroup." As they packed up, the weight of the moment settled over them. They had won a victory, but Sarah knew it was just the beginning. The war against the Zentari was far from over, and the mountains offered no guarantees of safety. For now, though, they had hope. And that was enough.